While a profession lends key skills on Survivor, it doesn't always help, and sometimes your job could even be your kryptonite on the show. Therefore, once again, I'll be reviewing 5 more times professions field on Survivor. Tripping, leg cramping and crawling into 5 is Rafe, the wilderness guide that lost the tribe challenge. In guiding the wilderness, Guatemala is a deadly underrated season in and of itself, but I want to focus on the deadly part in the marooning challenge. The producers had this, quite frankly insane, idea for the contestants to embark on an 11-mile, 24-hour hike in the wilderness. And in my opinion, Rafe had 3 massive advantages coming into this challenge. Firstly, they had Stephanie, who was in my opinion the better Palau captain of the 2. Even Jeff was praising her highly, describing her great work ethic, her unwillingness to quit, and even went as far as to say she was probably the strongest female that Survivor had ever had on the show. Then we got to Bobby, who helped around camp, I guess. Thanks, Jeff. Secondly, and it could be the editing, but the opposing Coombes tribe was a magnet to bad luck, with Bobby John's constant leg cramping and Blake getting a hit to the arm from the sharpest thing I've ever seen. That is not a piece of wood, that is a mace. But thirdly, and as I've already talked about prior, Rafe was a wilderness guide. This was his expertise. This should have been like putting 9 babies in a riding contest against Roald Dahl. But despite his incredible occupation, for some reason, Rafe hung back and never seemed to offer his expertise, instead passing on the leadership role to 2 others. The man cosplaying as a landscaper, and Stephanie, who as we all know, has a fantastic track record in leading her tribe to victory in challenges. I mean, even Brian is more involved in leadership than him. Moreover, if Rafe's tribe losing the Trek challenge isn't good enough, this is also the same man who is a wilderness guide who put his hand into a hornet nest searching for the idol. Real good threat assessment of that wilderness. On the topic of assessment, and number 4 is Cirie Fields from Micronesia. Now, before she was being renowned as the unluckiest Survivor contestant ever, Cirie worked as a nurse. Obviously, when doing medical assessments on patients with equipment, it requires steady hands, and this was put to the test in the final immunity challenge, the ball drop, where the final 3 contestants had to balance a metal ball on a wooden cylinder. Now, the comparison between a nurse and doing this challenge might not have the most synergy, which I would agree with if not for the earlier Cirie confessional. In episode 6, Cirie essentially does my job for me, calling out Tracy, the builder, for being unable to build a successful barricade. However, she then says if there was an operating room challenge, she'd have to succeed or she'd be out of a job. If she got shaky hands when using instrumentation, it would be all over and someone would die. So let's put that to the test, and let's say this little orb is embodying my soul. So Cirie, don't drop it, whatever you do. I think I died. Cirie drops out, giving Amanda immunity in a challenge. She even admitted through her profession she should have won. In fact, I've seen some people theorise production actually made this challenge to play to Cirie's strengths, giving her immunity because they realised the sudden change to a final 2 format caused Cirie to be the biggest threat and most likely to go out of the 3 ladies remaining. But hey, who knows? All we know for sure is Cirie dropped the ball, metaphorically and physically. On the topic of physicality and being part of the big Micronesia 3, we have Parvati in at number 3. While Parvati has changed occupations from television personality to a charity organiser, back in the olden days she was a boxer. This was put to the test in episode 6 of the Cook Islands in the infamous kicking and screaming challenge, resulting in a volley of moves like body slams, rolls, and Brad plus Adam seemingly trying to rebirth Aussie. Parvati's job was to pull the 2 ladies off the pole, and despite being a boxer and knowing how to inflict pain on people, she was largely ineffective. In fact, it fell to Rebecca, the makeup artist, to seemingly do most of the work by tackling Candice. I think the success Parvati had in a challenge that should have been in her wheelhouse can be best summarised by them still struggling with Candice in the sand, while Aitu Taku are on their last person. But once again, 7 seasons later in Heroes vs Villains, Parvati got served a challenge on a silver platter. That silver platter, of course, was buried under a foot of mud, as it was sumo in the mud. This was a one-on-one challenge where you had to shove your opponent in the mud with a pad. All you needed to be was strong, agile and tactical. These 3 components that are largely integral to boxing. In classic fashion, Candice and Parvati once again face off, with Parvati showing off her Just Dance 2009 moves. Now, you'd be forgiven if during this challenge you mistook Parvati's occupation as being a break dancer, as that is what she seems to be doing for 90% of it, with Candice never letting up and efficiently dumping her in the mud. Parvati should have been the last line of defense against the heroes, demolishing the villains in this challenge, but was ironically one of the villains that got eliminated the quickest. But in spite of her failures, at least Parvati made it to the end twice, and won on one of these occasions, which is more than what could be said for the next individual. Now, I know some of my viewers don't watch International Survivor, but you don't have to watch Australian Survivor to understand if you're a criminal barrister, you should be good at appealing to a jury. This is when Sharn comes in at number 2, the criminal barrister that lost $1 million Australian dollars because she couldn't convince a jury twice to vote for her to win. Now, to be fair, Sharn has good openings and is very strong at responding to certain questions you can tell she was expecting. The issue is if she's asked a question that's either A, difficult, or B, seen as a challenge. She immediately crumbles, which is kind of an integral aspect of being in a courtroom, no? Responding to challenging questions? Am I the idiot here? Probably. But we see in Champions vs Contenders, she's asked one tough question. In fact, no, not even that tough. Just a yes or no question by Brian if she knew Matt was going home. Yet she somehow manages in the same answer to say she didn't get time to tell him, but also she had time to tell him and should have told him. What? But in the courtroom, you should be experienced in finding strengths to your arguments and pushing them at the forefront of your pitch. But Sharn in Champions vs Contenders pitched she had loyalty, honour and integrity before she proved she wasn't loyal, and after that she still tried to argue to Matt she was loyal rather than change her argument to her big moves. Even Sam and Benji were telling the ladies the jury was filled with gamers and they had to pitch their big gameplay moments, and she still largely refused. From Season 3 to Season 5, she went from an overt game arguing she was loyal to a covert game arguing for her big moves. Now, to be fair, this time she was up against tougher competition in the Golden God. The Golden God. Ugh! But the second tribal went about as well as expected, where the biggest move she could name was a move someone else made. Not to mention she genuinely took a minute to consider's AK deal, where he gave her a 1 in 4 chance to guarantee he'll vote for her, rather than her pitching him his game. Not a good look to the jury. As one of my commenters write, Sharn's final tribals are so embarrassing for someone who's supposed to be one of the best lawyers in Australia. So in spite of being a barrister, Sharn continuously proved to be her own worst enemy and failed to convince the jury to vote for her. But, at number 1, we have the man on the thumbnail, Keith Famie, the gourmet chef that couldn't cook rice. We've officially reached that stage of ridiculousness, folks. Now, I get cooking on a campfire might be different to cooking in the real world, and even Khan in Australian Survivor Blood vs Water stated he used a rice cooker in the real world, meaning he struggled initially making the rice for his tribe. But even he managed to make rice that was edible, while also inventing a new recipe by the name of Crispies, which were rice left to cook at the bottom of the pan. Keith sucked at making rice so much, this abomination could literally be used as a paste for your wallpaper. And, as Tina goes on to say, it even tasted like wallpaper paste. Keith had the perfect opportunity to be a provider, but instead fell victim to his half-baked rice plan. Pun intended. Cirie then has to take the reins, creating some food for thought in the form of tortillas by using the tribe's water and flour. That's right, the aspiring actress was a better cook than the chef. Poor Amber was eating toasted flour and water with more enjoyment than all the times Keith cumulatively cooked rice for her. But Keith clearly didn't appreciate Cirie taking his job, so he took her actress job, embodying a crybaby, and oh boy was his audition convincing. Even though he did compliment Cirie's food, in the end you can tell he was annoyed at her, proving his profession had failed on Survivor. Nonetheless, thanks for watching everyone. I felt I was almost too kind to Candice this video, so if you want to see me indulge in roasting her, check out this video where I criticise her and 4 others for being on a tribe they shouldn't have been on. Subscribe if you enjoyed because it's extremely important, but have a great day, and peace!